Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Sikho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivas Hari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagarat Swami Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Pramanandi. Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Tinamini Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Siddharthani Sri Gaur Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tinamini Narayana Namaskritya Naruntevam Naruttamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Gujirayat Nashtapayeswa Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So, Shrimad, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, this morning, reading from Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, and text 31, 32, and 33. So 31 is on there now. And I'm going to go ahead and read it. I think when we get to 33, then devotees can chant if they want to. That's what I'm thinking of doing. Hare Krishna. So Canto 3, Chapter 7, text 31. Vachanda Pata Vaishamyam Pratiloma Niveshanam Jivasya Gatayu Yascha Yavatir Guna Karmaja. Sorry. Word for word, please. Pasandapata, the path of the faithless. Vaishamyam, imperfection by contradiction. Pratiloma, crossbreeding. Nivishanam, situation. Jivasya, of the living entities. Gataya, movement. Ya, as they are. Cha, also. Yavati, as many as. Guna, the modes of material nature. Karmaja, generated by different work. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Please also describe the imperfections and contradictions of the faithless atheists, the situation of crossbreeding, and the movements of the living entities in various species of life according to their particular modes of nature and work. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The combination of living entities in different modes of material nature is called crossbreeding. The faithless atheists do not believe in the existence of God, and thus their paths of philosophy are contradictory. Atheistic philosophies never agree with one another. Different species of life are evidence of varieties of the mixtures of mixtures of the modes of material nature. Text 32. Dharmata kama mokshanam nimitta nyavirodata vataya dandanitescha shrutasya chavidim pritak. Word for word. By Srila Prabhupada. Dharma, religiosity. Artha, economic development. Kama, sense gratification. Mokshanam, salvation. Nimitani, causes. Abhirodhata, without being contradictory. Vartaya, on the principles of a means of livelihood. Dandanite, of law and order. Cha, also. Shutasya, of the codes of scriptures. Cha, also. Vidhim, regulations. Pritak, different. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. You may also describe the non-contradictory causes of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation, and also the different means of livelihood and different processes of law and order as mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Okay, text 33. Shradasya chavidim brahman pitrinam sargam evacha graha nakshatra taranam kalavaya vasamstitim Shradasya chavidim brahman pitrinam sargam evacha graha nakshatra taranam kalavaya vasamstitim Shradasya chavidim brahman pitrinam sargam evacha graha nakshatra taranam kalavaya vasamstitim. Hare Krishna. Please stand if you feel so inclined.
Shraddhasya cha vidim brahman pitrinam sargameva cha graha nakshatra taranam kala vayava samstitim.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Shadahasya cha vidhim brahman pitrinam sargameva cha graha nakshatra taranam kalavayava samstitim. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay. Word for word. By Srila Prabhupada. Sadasya, of the periodical offerings of respects. Cha, also. Vidhim, regulations. Brahman, O Brahmana. Pitrinam, of the forefathers. Sargam, creation. Eva, as. Cha, also. Graha, planetary system. Nakshatra, the stars. Taranam, luminaries. Kala, time. Avayava, duration. Samstitim, situations. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Please also explain the regulations for offering respects to the forefathers, the creation of the Pitriloka, the time schedule in the planets, stars, and luminaries, and their respective situations. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The time durations of day and night, as well as months and years, are different in the different planets, stars, and luminaries. The higher planets like the Moon and Venus have time measurements different from those of the Earth. It is said that 6 months of this planet, Earth, equals 1 day of the higher planets. In the Bhagavad Gita, The duration of one day in Brahmaloka is measured to be 1,000 times the 4 yugas, or 4,300,000 years, multiplied by 1,000. And the month and year in Brahmaloka are calculated in that measure. Oma Ginati Mirandasya, Gyana Gana Shalakaya, Chakshu Umilitam Jena, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadatikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapada Kamalam, Shri Guru Vaisnavam Scha. Shri Rupa Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Pitam Tam Sajiva. Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Sri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitam Scha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Banu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustite Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Panamani Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhishya Kripa Sindhuve Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschathyari Sitavini. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayati Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Kuratise Namaha. Ananda Lilamaya Vigrahaya Himaviri Vicha Vishindaraya Tasmi Maha Prema Raspadaya. Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste. Hare Krishna. So, these are questions being asked by Vidura to Maitreya. The first one, text 31, asking that Maitreya describe the imperfections and contradictions of the faithless atheist. And then the situation of crossbreeding, which Srila Prabhupada talked about in the short purport that he gave. And in the movements of the living entities in various species of life according to the particular modes of nature and work. So that was the first one. And then he was also asking that Maitreya described the non-contradictory causes of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification and salvation, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, and the different means of livelihood, processes of law and order, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures. So much there. It's very broad topics that Vidura was asking that Maitreya explained. And then regulations for offering respects to forefathers, the Pitruloka itself, which is the planet of the forefathers, time schedule in the different planets and stars and luminaries based on their respective situations. So there were some things that were spiritual, and then many of the questions that Vidura was asking actually concerned the material world. Obviously, there are no atheists in the spiritual world. So if he talks about describing wanting to know the imperfections and contradictions of faithless people, faithless atheists. So, see, obviously, the first thing, so much about the faithless. It's kind of funny. They feel very strongly in what they've come to believe. Let's put it that way. What they've come to believe, which means it's not necessarily right. but they believe it, and they believe it strongly, and they use their whatever brain cells, as Sri Prabhupada says, the tiny brains, to come up with different connections based on whatever they believe in. But the imperfections are there. We go by Shabda Praman, Shabda Praman, the instructions from the Parampara. Because, and then the reason why it has to be that way is because if we went any other way, we have to make all kinds of assumptions. Why? Because the senses that we have in this body that we're using, all those senses are limited. You can't see that far, even if instruments have been made to make it a little possible, a little possibility to come that through the instruments we can see a few more things that the naked eye cannot see, or hear some other sounds, or even find out that there's some other sounds that exist outside at the sound range of our ears. But that all points to one thing. We are very limited. And anything that's limited cannot be perfect. The limitation alone makes it not a good idea to look at it as being perfect. Yehi samspasa jabuga, duka yunan ebati. Adyantavanta, konteya, nati ramsu Buddha. It's there in Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, text 22. Talks about the wise and the intelligent. The intelligent person is not interested in being part of miseries from contact with the senses, sense gratification. Why? It's temporary. It doesn't, they have a beginning, they have an end. So the wise person says, why do I involve myself with something that has a beginning and has an end? Why not permanent? So then the wise person is not interested in anything that's temporary, has a beginning, it has an end. The fact that it has a beginning, it has an end, it means that it's already material, and material things are not perfect. As we know well, everything that we use breaks down. Everything. The earth itself at some point will be annihilated. So everything is temporary. So because of that, inherently there are imperfections. Whatever the reason is for that thing to be created. Because Krishna is creating material world, his, in true Lord Vishnu, his expansion as Lord Vishnu, for different reasons. Those of us that wanted to be boss when Krishna is number one, we've been put here. And there are people here who don't even realize that this place is a place of no win. We cannot win in terms of being peaceful and being happy through the material energy. It's not possible. But they're trying. They're trying. And the more they try, the more confused they become. So there's so much imperfection and so much contradiction of the faithless. Now, Srila Prabhupada talks about in the short purport he gave to this particular text, text 31. Combination of living entities in different modes of material nature is called crossbreeding. Of course, there is also crossbreeding done by, the materialists, those who are curious to have other types of products come. They do this, but now crossbreeding of characters now it depends on the modes of material nature. So this is another way in which crossbreeding is being described, which is a higher definition of it than what the people who are curious about material nature use things to try to combine with others. A lot of that has been done. Now, there are, even if you just look at animals alone, the modes are there. The cow is in the mode of goodness. Tiger or dog is in the mode of passion. And the monkey is a combination of passion. Monkey is very passionate, but also ignorance is there. Mm. So here Prabhupada talks about the faithless, that they don't believe in the existence of God. Mm. And so whatever they think of, see, when you believe in Krishna, then it's easy to agree on a number of things. We know that Krishna is one who the spiritual as well as the material worlds come from. Nobody would disagree with that. And it's also said in the Bhagavad Gita, everything emanates from me, Krishna says. Mm. And this is knowledge by the wise who believe in it and they live their lives accordingly. So Srila Prabhupada is training us through his books to also be wise and live according to that, that understanding. Faithless atheists don't believe in the existence of God. So whatever they come up with as their philosophy, whatever they believe, there's so much contradiction that's there. It's interesting, even those who say they know about God, but are at the religious level, not transcendental level, but the religious level, they also have contradictions in some of their books. And sometimes there's contradiction in the same book, depending on who's speaking, according to what's recorded. Then that's there. Sometimes it's got to the point in some religions that even one personality is not quite well defined as to who that person is. In the Christian religion, none other than Jesus himself, the one they follow. They say Jesus is the Son of God. And others who are Christians say Jesus is God. So you can be the Son of God and God at the same time. And they try to come up with different philosophies. They try to come up with different, ways to explain what they're saying. And so one religion, which is a Christian religion, does not quite go along with another Christian religion's ideas about one person, who they follow, their main guru. So even in the religions, it's like that. That's why Krishna says, abandon all of them. Sarvadharman parite jamami kam sharanam bhaja. So the philosophy is full of assumptions, especially the atheists. Darwin theory of evolution by natural selection, he says. That species evolve over time through the inheritance of traits, the way they are, and then survival of the fittest, and then reproduction. And there's so much. And he thinks that that's how life gets diversified. Different types of living entities come to being. Evolution by natural selection. So many words that are, word jugglery practically. Shabda Pravan says that there are 8,400,000 species. And these are the creation based on being coached by Lord Vishnu. Who being coached? Lord Brahma. There is a creator. And a secondary creator. Mahavishnu, Prabhudaksai Vishnu, Lord Brahma. And then Shirudaksai Vishnu, who is present in every single atom, the Paramatma, and in the heart of every living entity. So if you look at one thing about Darwin's theory, then you compare it to the specific situation here, the Shabda Brahman, that our higher and accurate description of the way things are. Charles Darwin just simply looked at the situation and began, oh, it must be this, it must be this. And there's a big word that's been coined to associate with this. Here you go, oh, well, this is an assumption here, and this assumption is a very intelligent assumption. So they call it a hypothesis. And then they go through trying to prove whether this hypothesis is right or wrong. So much has been done with assumption that right now in science, the books say one thing, and then whoever reads that book, the students, bless their hearts, they finish their exams, they graduate, they say, I'm a scientist, and they get employed somewhere. Then when they get into the business itself, and they're supposed to apply the science, they know that the application is extremely limited because then it's the reality. Yes, what you learned is good. You can reason through things. This is what they tell you when you get employed in the company in so many words. But you're going to have to do the experiment and find out what happens with our situation that we're trying to produce. It doesn't have anything to do with this. Some techniques you learned, yes, you can apply it, but the end result is not going to be the theoretical one that you learn. You practically throw the theory out. Talk about assumptions. Very little is used of what people learn in school when they actually start doing the work in the companies. So Charles Darwin, you have to forget about Charles Darwin. I feel sorry for anyone who thinks in terms of Charles Darwin. Atheistic philosophers, the philosophies, they never agree with one another. They don't because they're all based on assumptions. There's another one too called John Dalton. They give him so much, accolades. He came up with the theory of atom. He said, oh, there must be the small particles, extremely small particles called atoms. And I have to apologize if I'm boring you a little bit because I have to say it only because these questions have been asked. But not that I'm interested even in discussing those because they're so off now. That's how turned off personally that I am. But anyway, matter is composed of small particles called atom. The atoms in a given element are the same size, mass, other things. Then atoms of different elements, different size, and other properties. Then he says atoms cannot be subdivided, and that was his first mistake. Atoms can be subdivided. So different species of life, Papa also made this point here, that there are evidence of the varieties of a mixture of modes of material nature, different species of life, because every type of life has a combination, either one or a combination of those modes of material nature. Goodness, passion is ignorance, as we gave examples earlier of the cow, monkey, the dog, and how they live their lives is based on these modes of nature. Modes of nature literally rule how life is led at all levels. Mode of goodness, the highest exhibition of mode of goodness in the material world is from the demigods. More mode of goodness than anyone else. Of course, they live very well too compared to us. Way better compared to us materially. But that's it. Modes, goodness, passion, ignorance. Pure goodness is in the spiritual world, not tainted with anything else. And the pure devotees that also come to this level here, like the earth, like the way Srila Prabhupada came, and even Lord Chaitanya himself came. They live in a mode of transcendence the whole time. Why? Because they have Krishna in their minds the whole time. The whole time. So in the next text, Srila Prabhupada translates that Vidura is asking about religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and moksha, salvation. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. In the end, moksha, in this case, leads to merger into the Brahmajyoti. So if we think about it, outside of Dharma, artha, kama, moksha are all selfish. Sense gratification, karma, artha is economic development, and moksha is liberation. Artha, economic development, it's selfish because we look at how we can improve our material lives. That's our economic development. The countries talk about their economic development. But again, the countries are also, on the grand scale, being selfish. It's not a question of one country helping another country. That happens every now and then. But there's always something else that they want from it, even if one country gives help to another country. But for the most part, the country is watching out for itself. How they can go on economically. Sense gratification is karma that's Krishna. Outside of that, people don't want Krishna involved in the sense gratification. Is how to gratify my senses. But devotee is supposed to live to gratify the senses of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, according to his instruction and the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master. And then moksha is also selfish because the person is looking to merge into the Brahma Jyoti and be satisfied with that. It's all about me, my development, my sense gratification, my liberation. So all of that's selfish. And selfishness is not life in the spiritual world. They don't go together at all. At all. So a soul in moksha claims to be satisfied. But in the Brahma Jyoti, non-activity, there is no activity. So eventually the person will have to, or that soul will have to fall back into the earthly planet because by nature, we have to have some activity. By nature. Even if here we have examples like somebody who is being punished by the law. And one example is, okay, you cannot go out to your house. You're wearing something that monitors wherever you are. You can be checked remotely. Don't go out of your house. You can do activities inside your house. You can't go out of your house. House arrest. That alone, after a while, will play very much on the mind of the person who's on the house arrest. There has to be variety. There has to be activity. So non-activity will never cause any soul to feel happy. Maybe initially some satisfaction because it feels peaceful in the Brahmajyoti, the effulgence of the Lord. But they cannot stay there. And of course, it's also described in CC Chaitanya Charitamrita that a person who is in the Brahmajyoti cannot go to the Vaikuntha planets. They cannot. And it's described in Adi Lila chapter 5, text 20, 21, thereabouts. You don't have to pull it up, but that's where it is. You can't. It comes right out and says it. Can't go from Brahmajyoti to the spiritual world. You have to come back to this, be in activity, because life in the Brahmajyoti and life in the Vaikuntha plan is quite different. So we are fortunate. We always be thanking Srila Prabhupada that he's come to guide us in the right path, not just salvation, but the right path of being able to fall in love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the devotees and relate in that way. So, Srila Prabhupada explains in Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, Text 45, that Sridhar Swami is saying, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, those fruitive activities, philosophical speculation, salvation. People are trying to live that way, but that's not the ultimate goal of life. Srila Prabhupada has made it clear to us, but he also says it here that Sridhar Swami is also stressing this. We should never be about sense gratification, never be about speculating philosophically. Lord Chaitanya has made it clear that the only way to be an effective Shiksha Guru, and he wanted us to be that way, instructing Guru, is don't contaminate what has been said. Say it like it is. You can give examples, but they should support the statement as it is in the Shastra. Nobody should contaminate it, because as soon as you do that, then you also go into the same assumption mode that these people who are speculating, these people who disagree with each other, you go into that kind of mode. Not good at all. So it says, preach. Preach, because preaching is a way to introduce Krishna to other people, but you have to preach based on exactly what has been said. Again, depending on the time and the place, you can come up with examples, but they have to support the statement as it in the Shastra. Nobody should change that. Yeah, I know that there were instances that there was some. I was actually at a meeting, Dallas, I think, yeah, really was. Either Houston or Dallas, but it was Texas. ISKCON meeting. Quite a few gurus were there. And there was a discussion by Srila Prabhupada disciple, I don't remember the name, I can still see the face, Brahmachari for life, for this life. And they were discussing some things that were changed in the Bhagavad Gita. Just expressions, different words to express something, and even that was brought up. And this Prabhu quoted different sides of it and said, okay, it was like this at first when we printed it. He's associated with the BBT, by the way. That's part of his service. And he said, okay, well, the new ones that we printed later, there were a few words that were changed. And the whole question is, has the meaning of what Srila Prabhupada meant, he said, has that been changed by the change of the few words? So there was actually a debate going on about it. And since he was associated with the BBT, that was the right person actually to bring it up. And changes were to be made. So I'm glad that there are situations, there are devotees who actually very, 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 lack of a better word, passionate about making sure that things that Srila Prabhupada said don't get changed to the point where the meaning gets changed, because then we all get affected. Everybody that reads it later on. Very, very important that we keep it that way. So the ultimate goal of life is not this moksha. It's indicated by Supreme Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita chapter 18, text 65. Do 4 things. Man mana bhakto. Man mana bhakto. Man yajimam namaskuru. Think of me, become my devotee, offer obeisance to me, and worship me. 4 things. Prabhupada expressed. I remember one lecture which was videoed, and Srila Prabhupada literally opened his eyes wide. You're not reading Bhagavad Gita? Then he quoted this. You always think of the Lord, become the Lord's devotee. You always offer obeisances to him. You always worship the Lord. And then he quoted right after that the next one. Sarva dharman pariteja mame kam sharanam vacha. Aham tam sarva papibhyo moksha ishami mascha. And he was really stressing it. Krishna says, I'll save you from all simple reactions. Don't be afraid. Don't fear. So the religions are there, and we already talked about how sometimes they disagree even about the identity of Jesus the Christ. Some people even don't know that Jesus the Christ is a title. So he is actually Jesus. The correct way to identify him is Jesus the Christ. Because people say Jesus Christ, that's all been kind of accepted. But anyway, it's almost like saying, Trump, Trump president. Nobody says that. Christ Jesus is correct. I'm not going to belabor it so much, because the Christ is the title, and then Jesus is the name. So we have to say Trump the president, not Trump president. But it's being said now, and nobody knows that even these little things are there. There are differences have been made. So that's how things just get slowly contaminated. And the next thing you know, people aren't quite sure what Jesus' identification is. Is he God or is he Son of God? Anyway, so we come to this. Srila Prabhupada has translated wonderfully. Krishna saying, always think of me, become my devotee. Worship me, offer your homage to me, then you will come to me without fail. Hmm? He says, you're my very dear friend, so I promise you this. If you do this, you come to me without fail. When you think of Krishna, you will go to Krishna. You think of Krishna all the time, you will think of Krishna at the time of death. And he also has said, you think of me at the time of death, you're coming to me. Hmm? So worship me, offer your homage to me. Sometimes devotees say, but at the time of death, if you think of Krishna, especially when devotees are around and they're chanting, when a person on the deathbed, they will definitely remember Krishna. That's not hard, only because the devotees are helping. But what about when death, in a manner of speaking, blindsides a person? In other words, the person didn't see that it was coming in. There's an accident, and all of a sudden, he's living the next moment, the person is dead. And that person is a devotee. What happens? Obviously, that's not a situation where they're on a deathbed. Obviously, that's not a situation where devotees are around them and chanting, for them to remember Krishna. So what happens in that case? The answer is if the person this has been explained more than once, I've heard. If the person has spent their life chanting regularly, chanting intensely, which is the best thing to do, and remembering and serving Krishna, then even in that situation, that kind of death, we all know that a moment is really a split second. And the Lord Chaitanya, gives so much mercy that even when death comes without the person knowing that it's around the corner and it can actually affect them and take their lives, that thought of Lord Chaitanya, would come into the person's mind before that incident happens. Literally. Lord Chaitanya, when I heard it, I'll just quote exactly how I heard it. He will force his image into the mind of the sincere devotee, even at that time. So nobody has to worry about death. We're all covered. We have to be concerned about staying a devotee and doing what it takes in Bhakti Yoga. That's our part. And if we do that, then, as Krishna says, if you think of me, if you worship me, if you offer homage to me, if you serve me, and you serve the devotees, then you come to me without fail. You do this, I'll do this. So we have that opportunity. It's just a question of how seriously we take it. And we also should keep reminding each other. So, and then Vidura was asking Maitreya about Pitraloka. And then also the different times in the different planets and so on. Srila Prabhupada says, the durations of the day and night and the months and the years are different in the different planets. When it gets longer from the earthly planets, and after Bhuvaloka, then the Swagaloka, and then the times along, where one day equals 6 months. Planets like the moon, they all have slightly different times. They're longer, all of those planets that are above the moon in the universal arrangement. They have times that are longer. Their one day is much longer than ours, or even the moon. We see the moon. We maybe talk a little bit about the moon because that's been described also in the Shastra, another part of the Shastra. The moon, sometimes we see the full moon, and sometimes you see a quarter moon, sometimes you see no moon. And it's been explained, I think, that going from whichever one you want to, like no moon to the next no moon, that's one full cycle on the moon planet. So from beginning of no moon up to full moon, that is 15 days. Then the full moon down to no moon, another 15 days. And so that's 30 days to start from one no moon situation to the next no moon situation, or 30 days to start from a full moon situation to the next full moon also. It's 30 days. And it's been explained in the Shastra that that's the one day. So full moon is like noontime. Mm-hmm. And we know that for us, full moon or noontime to the next noontime, that's 24 hours. Or anytime you go to the same situation from one day to another, that's our 24 hours. That's full day. That's 30 days for the moon. Based on our time, it's 30 days. To go from no moon to the next moon is 30 days. Like that. So they do monthly. But there are other planets that do 12 hours. Their daytime is 6 months. So the next nighttime is also another 6 months. So they start the morning to the next morning. That's 1 year of our time. When Sri Papa says 1 day is 6 months, it means the daytime, the 12 hours, the 6 months. So basically, in those planets, then that's Swagaloka, thereabouts. But when you get to Brahmaloka, those ones even longer. 1 day, and there's thousands. 1 day or 12 hours is 4,300,000,000, and 4,320,000,000 years. 4 billion. And then the nighttime is also like that. That's for the highest material planet. So, yeah, there are differences. Time is very relative. And then he talked about Pituluka, and I'm probably the last one that we mentioned. Then we'll talk about us, devotees, and what we should be about. Pituluka is a planet of the ancestors. It's a planet, which Papa explains, the qualified departed ancestors reside. The qualified. How qualified? Those who are with more goodness. Material goodness, even that. We're not talking about spiritual world, because Pituluka is not in the spiritual world. And the demigod in charge of that is the assistant of Yamaraj. His name is Aryama. Ayama. That's the demigod in charge of the Pituluka planet, where the ancestors are. And according to Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, Text 18, Pituluka is obtained by good charitable work. That's how a person, on the material level now. So there are those who also, family members who may be in a gross, not gross body, ghostly type body, by making some pujas, and these are all the details describing that, appealing to Ayama, that particular demigod, that some of the family members can be those who are in the subtle or ghostly type bodies can be given a gross body. Their sins or that particular situation can be commuted, shortened. So how does that happen? Papa describes it in Canto 4, Chapter 18, Text 19. He describes that those who are very sinful and attached to family, house, village, or country, very sinful, more the ignorance people, they don't receive, some of them don't receive a gross body of these material elements, but they are put in a subtle body, especially those who commit suicide. You get put in a subtle body immediately. You don't get a gross body right away. Subtle body. So the mind, ego, and intelligence is what they're using practically. And they're called ghosts. So Shri describes the ghostly situation is very painful because the ghost has intelligence, he has a mind, he has a sense of identity, and they want to enjoy material life. But you have to have a gross material body to enjoy material life. And they can't. They know that others are enjoying and they want to enjoy like that. They can't do it because of they don't have any gross body, the type of senses to enjoy. So out of spite, they sometimes create disturbances for others, just to scare other people, and then they just get a kick out of that. But actually, they're envious of the fact that others have material bodies and they don't. So, to deal with that situation, to get out of that, this subtle body only, the ghostly type body. Family members, especially the sons, they offer oblations to that demigod that's the head of Pitaloka, Ayama. Mm. Or it can be offered to Lord Vishnu also. The Lord is the controller of everything. Mm. So it's explained that the son of a dead man can go to a particular place. This is Gaya in India, in the Vishnu temple. They offer oblations for the benefit of that ghostly parent. Mm. And Srila Prabhupada explains it's not that everybody's father becomes a ghost, no. But when that happens, that is obviously serious for that person who is in a ghost. But it's very uncomfortable to live like a ghost. So these oblations are offered in that particular temple so that if any family member happens to be a ghost, then he'll be favored, sooner than later with a gross body. He'll be put in another situation to take birth, and this time, have a ghost body. But for devotees, just by taking prasad of Lord Vishnu, there is no chance of a devotee becoming a ghost or anything lower than a human being. So much. We're already used to eating. This is how we sustain this physical body. We just have to eat the prasad, the remnants of the Lord's food, and this ghostly situation is out the door for us. So much is built in that we just have to stay with this process of Krishna consciousness. And this part, taking prasad, is very wonderful. Who doesn't like to eat? And by taking it, because it came as remnants of Lord Vishnu, before we took it, then we don't become a ghost, don't have to deal with anybody having to go somewhere else to do, pujas to get us out of it. No, there's no question of any devotee becoming a ghost. So this has so many, for lack of a better word, spiritual perks to it, even material perks to it, just to be a devotee. So it's worth putting in that effort to disconnect from material sense gratification and take the chanting that Lord Chaitanya has come to mercifully give the whole world and been pushed by those down the parampara from Lord Chaitanya, and now we are doing it too. Just by doing it, chanting, taking prasad, serving, and most importantly, because we shouldn't do things to sabotage ourselves. It is very important to relate well to devotees. At the very least, we should be cordial to devotees. Don't think of offending anybody. There should be the cooperative posture, the cooperative mood among all devotees. As far as situations involving discrepancies, yeah, that would happen. Disagreement happens in the spiritual world, but it never winds up in the situation where this person hates this other person. No. Disagreement in the spiritual world, as explained, is there's more than one way to do things. So sometimes there's a discussion. Okay, we should do this way, the other person said maybe this other way. But there, because so much love is there will be a final decision, and it'll go along with it. Gopis do it all the time. All the time. Different suggestions here and but the difference is they don't stick to their suggestion as the final. That's the difference. And here, our egos want to make us stick to my idea. And why didn't they take my idea? Ideas should be as a suggestion, as service to everybody. If it gets taken, fine. If it doesn't get taken, since the idea is a good idea, you believe the idea is a good idea, just because you've offered an idea that's good, it goes in your spiritual bank account. The Paramatma will note that, even if it doesn't get used, the fact that you had good intention and you suggested something that's good, that alone gives you spiritual credits. So if it doesn't get taken and physically used, it does not mean you've lost. So there's no point being upset about the fact that I had an idea and it was not taken. Because if we push that way and we want our ideas to be taken, then Maya has a chance now to bring in this false ego situation. And then next thing you know, it's flared up to somebody else who also felt the same way. And now, my idea didn't get taken. That was my idea didn't get taken. And sometimes they band together and be ones that are against this other person. And then division starts. That's just how it starts. And when in fact we're supposed to cooperate together. So we are fortunate already. Nobody's going to become a ghost. You go to the spiritual world or you take birth as a human being, continue that alone. But in saying, as the Prabhupada has also said, it's better to finish our business of Krishna consciousness in this lifetime, in this body. Get it over with, get out of the material world, go home, and be eternally blissful. That is the best situation for everybody. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So thank you. Many, many questions were asked by Vidura, and of course, Maitreya will explain in the next chapters to come. So many points that he made. This was only 3 texts, 4 other questions that Vidura was asking. But later on, when Maitreya explains, so Maitreya's explanations are wonderful. That is the very next chapter. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Now, if there are any questions or comments, please unmute yourself and let's have some Krishna Katha. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Hare Krishna.
Anybody has questions, please just unmute yourself and go ahead. One thing that I took away today is at the very end, you said, we come up with ideas and even if it's not accepted, or even if it's
Or
not
used. Yeah, if it's not used.
It'll go into our spiritual account. I think that is such a good way to look at it. And not get caught up in our ego and say, this is the best, please do this, instead of pushing it forward. And I think more importantly, that also will help us accept that we all say it, that we should surrender, that he is the supreme, that he knows everything. But in the way we do things, we are sort of kind of not accepting that fact, because that's why we think we have to push forth our idea or our way, because we think we are the only ones who know it. What I'm trying to say is it's one thing to actually say it and a whole another thing to actually accept it and work accordingly. But when you say it this way, that it will go into my spiritual account, that means I'm accepting that he knows, whether or not people in my circle know it or not, he knows. And I must accept that fact. And if I am pushing forth, that means maybe I'm not accepting that fact that Krishna is supreme. I think my point is we have to, why we say it, we have to practice what we are studying.
Yes.
If we practice, that means we have accepted. If we don't practice, we're just knowing it in theory, which is also important. That is also equally important, because you are at least spreading that information, and somebody who is ready to accept that information will accept it. So it's not to downplay that, but actually practicing, which is very hard again. And I think a lot of times we discuss about that, is how hard it is to actually practice.
Yeah, it's the ego, false ego, I suppose. It's a false ego situation. It's not the easiest. That's why Srila Prabhupada said that is the most difficult one to overcome. It's usually the last one that you face. You stay in Krishna consciousness for a number of years, you begin to realize some things begin to hit us. That we say all kinds of things have happened to kind of make it a little bit murky in this whole process of growing spiritually. That may be there. this happened, we point to different situations, even sometimes the other persons, my supervisor on the job, my other devotees that are doing this, somebody that doesn't like me, this, all of that. Then when we finally look at it from a broad perspective, mix it all together, what's happened, then we realize the greatest saboteur is our own minds. It's our own mind. It just comes down to how the mind perceives things. And the sooner we come to realize that, the better it is going to be for us, our own minds. If anyone sabotages us, it's best, it most likely going to be something that our mind has accepted that it shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. And there's something in the Shastra about it, because we tend to point fingers. So we'll say one thing about it. That part of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Maharaj Pariksit, it's such a big lesson to me, and I learned that so much. I had to give up so much of my thinking based on that part of Bhagavatam. The cow and the bull. Personality of Kali disturbing the cow and bull. And Maharaj Pariksit came. He didn't want that happening because he didn't want any negative things happening in his kingdom. But when he questioned the bull, they knew who had done it. The cow knew, the bull knew, but they didn't want to respond that it was the personality of Kali that did it. Why? It's so common for us to say, this person did it, when the evidence is there, seeing what had happened. And now, personality of religion does not want to admit it was Kali that was beating him. Does not want to admit that to Maharaj Pariksit. And when he explained, then Maharaj Pariksit was impressed. He says, you're not an ordinary bull. You must be the personification of religion. Now, here's the explanation. This is in the Shastra and that part. When something happens to us, first of all, when we understand that, when we explain to them, then we really believe another point too, that Brahma said, Krishna is Sarva Karana Karana, the cause of all causes. Now, here's how the personality of religion, the bull, explained it. And Srila Prabhupada gave purport on it. So the point is, when something has happened, it is because of something negative that we have done in previous time. Doesn't have to be previous life necessarily, but the previous time, previous to that time, that there's some reaction that is coming to us, and that reaction has to happen through someone else. And so that someone else is being used to bring that reaction to us. Therefore, the person that we see as causing us a problem is actually a tool being used to teach us the lessons that we need to learn. And do you blame a tool? The knife can cut you. Would you blame the knife? Of course not. You don't. So as soon as you begin to look at it like this is a tool, the person that's used, I have to go through this because there are no accidents. So I have to go through this. So the person is being used to put me in that situation that I have to learn some lessons from, or reactions to something that I've done in the past. If you understand it that way, then you won't blame anybody, even the person that does something negative to you. And this is how the bull explained it. And my eyes was extremely impressed. He says, you have to be the personality of religion to look at it that. Because normally when something negative happens to us and we know who caused it, we'll say, you did it. You did it. End the case. But to look at it from a higher reasoning and say, nothing, that's why I say the Lord is the cause of all causes. If Krishna has allowed it to happen, there is something attached to it, something about me that made it possible for that arrangement to be made. And the person that did it is the person that's playing that kind of role to cause that reaction to come to me. So if we accept that, and boy, if we have a big ego, never accept. It's going to be very difficult to accept it. Now, the other question is then what happens? Can we defend ourselves when things are happening to us that are negative? Yes, of course. We should. Now, does that sound contradictory? No. Look at it from the point of view is, anybody will say, well, how crazy you are if you just put your hand there and have somebody take something and chop it off. The other side of it is the person who caused it has done something wrong. They're going to pay for it. Therefore, if you defend yourself, it is not wrong to do that. But you can defend yourself up to a point. If it's meant to happen, you can't really stop it completely. You can't. If it's meant to happen, sometimes it would even blindside you and you wouldn't know, and it would happen. But the one thing that's good about this type of understanding that the bull gave is it helps us to begin to take, this is the one big advantage of the Buddhists. We look at it that way. It has something to do with me. That's why this thing happened. If we accept that, then we begin to take away all of that negative feelings that we have, especially towards other devotees that may have done something negative towards us. It was an arrangement for us to learn some lessons. So look at them as they were just being used because the lessons had to happen. So somebody had to do something. And bless their hearts, they were the ones that were used to teach us a lesson. That's not good for them. But at least you look at it that way. I'm not going to hate this person because they were just being used in a situation that I had to learn. And another thing that supports it is, yes, that person did something to us that was negative. But if we look at it like, all right, so it was some things that I needed to learn and Krishna made the arrangement. Remember that that person is not necessarily doing the same thing to others. And because the person is not doing the same thing to others, if he did it to us, that negative thing, it was not by chance. It was definitely a plan. And Krishna is behind it. But the first time I read it, it blew me away, the personality of religion. So it goes to the extent of telling us we should not blame, take as quickly as possible, remove that thinking of blaming others and blaming others, blaming others. There are lessons that we're learning. Those people are being used. And if we keep blaming others, then that would go against us too. It's also in the Shastra, the same part of the Shastra. It's explained. Chanamali Swami was to give a lecture on it and spent a long time saying, you got to, that's why, bring Jesus again into it. Forgive, forgive, forgive. The forgive is to disconnect yourself from it because no things happen by accident. There were some things about us that we've done previously that we've brought this kind of reaction that it's only a matter of time it comes to us. Even to take it away from all of us. One example, Dhritarashtra. He was born blind. He was born as a prince. Right? Everything is there. He was going to enjoy life. These sense gratification, so much is there in Hastinapur. But he's been born blind. If only my mother didn't close her eyes at the time that he was supposed to get pregnant, and then she looked at, oh, why me, why me, why me? So why me, why me, why me? Dhritarashtra finally asked Krishna, why was I born blind? And Krishna explained, 50 lifetimes ago, you were a hunter. You took a flaming arrow and you did target practice with it. You shot an arrow into a nest of birds. There were 100 birds, little birds that hadn't even learned to fly yet. They all got killed. The nest got burned. The mother was in the nest at the time, and that fire blinded her eyes, the mother bird. So that was there against you, and later on, you had to pay for it. So you had to go through one situation, another situation, 50 lifetimes later. Now you had a situation where you were married and you had 100 sons, just like the 100 birds. And you were the hunter that killed those 100 birds. So your 100 sons were also killed by one person, Ping. And you also got blind because you blinded the mother bird. So when negative things happen to us, something has happened in the past that, of course, we don't remember. Dhritarashtra definitely didn't remember. All he knew is I'm blind now. Why? Then Krishna told him. So we immediately, if we begin to practice this, and with some help, with some prayers, so we begin to practice this. Because I had to go through this. And Gitanagi, a lot of things that happened to me that I really could have pointed fingers at so many people in the community. But after really incorporating this, I realized, Okay, so it had to be things that I had to go through because of my previous life and whatever I did that was negative. And so basically just get it out of your system, get it out of your system, and I have a very good relationship with all those people that did that stuff. So it's not easy to practice it, but it's definitely possible if you really want to improve, our lives as devotees. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. I think it is very humbling. It's one thing to say, yeah, I had to go through this because of something I have done earlier, but to go further and to say, I had to learn a lesson from this. That's even more humbling,
But that's how we grow, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how we grow, because we are getting purified in the process. And the part of the purification is not the easiest thing. It really isn't. And even if we've heard it now, but to practice it is another story.
Yes.
It can be done if you really want to and you pray about it. You can, it comes down to humility. It really comes down to the humility.
And again, I think gratitude for Prabhupada for
Mhm.
giving all of this, giving us this forum even to be talking about this.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that we are doing today is because of him. So
Yes,
one more
absolutely.
time, thank you to Prabhupada.
Yeah. And if you've noticed one thing also, it's like devotees, we should be very grateful, not only to Srila Prabhupada, to all Prabhupada and everybody that's helped. Notice on this, this is just a realization that I'd like just to share. When we have situations that are difficult, like COVID and the pandemic and so on, one way or the other, devotees benefit from it.
Mm.
The physical stuff that happens, devotees, people and non-devotees alike, leaving their bodies, and of course, some people lost family members. That's traumatic to them. That may be, and it's nothing to kind of write off because it affected our emotions quite a bit that the disease came and took. But here we are. Mhm. Now, we used to, before that, we have to wait for our spiritual masters to come from wherever they came from to somewhere, even in our temple or close to our temple, that we can travel to just to hear them in one lecture. Now, many disciples are able to hear the spiritual masters practically on a daily basis because of the very electronic same configuration that we're using right now. I'm sitting in Harrisburg, but I can preach in Philadelphia. Hmm? What caused it? COVID. COVID made us take more seriously. So everything that happens, devotees have a way, and the Krishnas arranged it, have a way to benefit from it. Many, 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 many people were saying all kinds, many of our leaders, Malati and all of them, they're saying, yes, this has happened, and it obviously on a physical level is quite disturbing for the whole planet. But it's changed my outlook of things, and there are some things I wasn't able to do, and now that my lifestyle has had to change, I've actually benefited tremendously from it, and we keep benefiting. So for us, it seems to me, and this is an assumption on me, but I kind of will go by it, stand on it some, that everything that happens, even here on this earth, that seems to be negative, devotees will find one way to benefit from it or help others too. That will always happen, especially in wars. Devotees go out and start, people are hungry, they don't know, there's such traumatic situation for them, and they distributing prasadam. Now, if you're hungry, it doesn't matter who's serving you. You eat, somebody gives you free food, you definitely eat it. To just keep nourished and keep going. That's the least you should do. And you'll be very grateful to the person that gave them to you, gave the food stuff to you. But they've given you prasadam, and good relationship has been established, and now the Buddhists can actually preach because of the prasadam that they gave. They'll be able to convince others to come to Krishna. So, and that's a traumatic situation, war. Still, this is the way some people come to Krishna consciousness. So the Buddhists can use any traumatic situation to their advantage. Rather than blame the situation itself, look at how we can benefit from it. Hare Krishna. So any final questions? If not, then thank you very much for coming on to hear
Thank
this.
you very much, Prabhu. Those
Krishna,
nice
Hare
points,
Krishna Mataji.
nice
Jai.
points you gave us. For me especially, whatever I do, I had to think that my own past deeds, I had to pay for it.
It's but we are getting improvement. We're going to head it. It's all way to head back to Godhead.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
very
in the
nice
end,
class. I just joined halfway, but it was very nice that
Krishna's mercy
those
goes.
points
It's
you
all
gave.
about Him.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Any final comment to question? If not, then thank you, dear devotees, for coming on.
Thank you very
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Vanchaka. Jai.
Sarvesya
Hare
kripasindhubhyo
Krishna. Patitanam
Pattanam
Pavanebhyo
pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sira Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. Hare Krishna.